Good afternoon from Southeast Michigan, from the Center for Middle East and North African Studies. The time here is 2:05 p.m. Eastern United States time. I'm Muzamil Hussain, Assistant Professor of Communication and Media, where I do work on global media and communication and comparative digital politics. I'm also the Associate Director of the Center for Middle East and North African Studies. I'd like to just do three introductory tasks before we get started with our session. Number one, I'd like to tell our new members of the public who join us on each of the 7 Wednesdays of this colloquium about the Center. The Center for Middle East and North African Studies, or the study of the region of the Middle East and North Africa, began at this university, at the University of Michigan, as early as 1889. It became the programmatic study of Middle East and North Africa began as a center in the year 1961, signifying the University of Michigan's commitment to area studies and language training at this university for the past 6 decades. Today, Semenas is a designated comprehensive national resource center. The designation is from the US Department of Education, which indicates our dedication to promoting a broader and deeper understanding of the region, its histories, cultures, languages, and peoples through the activities of research, education, and public outreach programming. Number two, one of the major annual public outreach programming that we do is this Semenas colloquium every fall semester. This semester, we have 7 scheduled Wednesdays where we have a guest expert joining us to cover the topic of this semester, which is Public Health and Pandemics Across the MENA, a multidisciplinary exhibition. Today's session considers lexical perspectives on this broader theme and is co-sponsored by the LSA program on Arab and Muslim American Studies in the College of LSA's Department of American Studies. The second sponsor is the Department of English Language and Literature, also in the College of Literature, Sciences, and the Arts, LSA. And our third sponsor is the University of Michigan's Ford School of Public Policy's graduate program in Science, Technology, and Public Policy. These 3 co-sponsorships reflect the intersecting interest in the factors that affect public health and public health services, and also different ways of understanding and unpacking complex issues like a global pandemic in different areas in the world. Previously, in our first 3 sessions, we covered historical, institutional, and gendered ways and methodologies of understanding the pandemics and public health histories and present complexities in the Middle East and North Africa. Today, we will cover lexical perspectives, and in the remaining 3 sessions in the following 3 Wednesdays, we will also be looking at psychological, physiological, and behavioral approaches to understanding public health and pandemics across the MENA from a multidisciplinary approach. Finally, again, our programming runs on Wednesdays, 2 p.m. Eastern to 4 p.m. We have a 2-hour format. First, we will hear from our guest experts for about 20 to 40 minutes. Second, we will break for a discussion with the public for a question and answer period for approximately 30 minutes. During that time, please use the Q&A feature that is part of the Zoom software to type in your questions for that period, and I will moderate and draw questions at that time. And finally, the third portion of this 2-hour session is a final 30-minute period, a more intimate session with enrolled students from this course to engage with the scholar for a deeper discussion and dialogue. So I'd like to welcome you all today. We're here to engage our guest expert on the topic of language, its possibilities, and its impacts in the context of English and Arabic. His work is cited by researchers engaged in the study of language and linguistics, but also health communication and global media scholars as well. Our guest today is Dr. Samir Nasir Olimat. He is an assistant professor of translation and linguistics in the English department at Al-Balqa Applied University in the city of Salt in Jordan, in the Kingdom of Jordan. He received his PhD in translation studies and computational linguistics from the University of Leeds in the United Kingdom in 2019. His research interests are in the areas of English to Arabic and Arabic to English translation, Quran translation, crisis translation, as well as computational linguistics and sociolinguistics. Dr. Olimat is the founder of the Leeds Corpus of Euphemisms in the Quran. He participates regularly in national and international peer-reviewed conferences. He has published several articles in peer-reviewed and specialized journals. And for those enrolled in the course, the 2 recommended readings provided to you cover some of the most recent and cutting-edge scholarship on understanding euphemisms and dysphemisms in Arabic, as well as in presidential discourse in understanding COVID-19. Professor Olimat today will be speaking on a topic titled, "Do we speak COVID-19?" ? Language and translation in the era of global crises. Please join me in welcoming Professor Samir Nasir Olimat. Thank you. Professor Olimat, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Professor Muzammil Hussein, for this invitation. And also many thanks for Christine for her effort and cooperation during the last period. My topic, and I would like to thank all the attendees for attending this lecture and to be a part of the Center for Middle East and North Africa Colloquium series for this year. My topic is, do we speak COVID-19, language and translation in the era of global crisis? About the components of my presentation, I will talk about the language and COVID-19. Then I will talk about the euphemistic and dephemitic expression that used by the Jordanian people for dealing with or describing COVID-19. And also I will talk about why Jordanians choose certain euphemistic and dephemitic expression. Then I will talk about some techniques and strategies that used by the Jordanian people. After that, I will move to another related topic related to the euphemism part in the political text. COVID-19 euphemistic expression in political text, why political leaders use the euphemistic expressions, and I will talk about the Trump's personality, and I choose some certain euphemistic examples used by Trump for dealing with COVID-19 crisis. Then I will move to another part, which is about translation and the crisis, particularly about COVID-19 and some translation problems that face translator during the COVID-19. All of us, we agree that COVID-19 is a global health problem and crisis and affected all the population and countries, so that Jordan, as any other country, like other country in the world, takes some procedures and some precautionary procedures and measures, which like state of emergency and imposed complete lockdown, including business shutdown, border closure, and moving to the online learning or e-learning, so that the COVID-19 has affected treated all aspects of daily life. One of the, affected the finance, health, science, economy, communication, and teaching, sports, and particularly I would talk about how COVID-19 affect the language and translation areas. As we know, in crisis and disasters, speakers use certain linguistic strategies to maintain a social relationship and to manage communication with others. Sometimes they use indirect language and other people use direct language. Indirect language, I mean, is the euphemistic expression, which is using an offensive or offensive or pleasant expression instead of an impolite expression, so that we use offensive intentional substitution. Sorry, this intentional substitution of offensive or unpleasant expression with a more agreeable or polite expression for discussing taboo or unspeakable topics. We have different areas in language. We can use them or we can use the euphemistic expression to deal with them, like sex, for example, like diseases, like death, body parts, and other things. Another part, which is indirect language or direct language. Direct language is, I mean, the euphemistic expression, which is how to use an offensive expression. It's the opposite of euphemistic expression, is to use offensive or unpleasant term. We use it instead of acceptable or neutral expression, and we use this part to attack the addressees or the taboo topic itself, so that our focus will be on the two direct and indirect language, the euphemistic expression and the euphemistic expression. We asked the Jordanian people, as you know, Jordan is a part in the Middle East, and we asked them how to deal or how to describe the COVID-19 pandemic. We found 85% preferred using euphemistic expression. This is the first finding. Then also we found that females prefer using euphemistic expression more than males. And another finding is that we found that people with a high educated level use more euphemism than uneducated people. And the old people also use euphemistic expression than young people. All of these results were significant, but the most significant is the euphemistic terms that they are used by the Jordanian speakers or the Jordanian people, such as we found that they use different euphemistic expression like al-mushkila, which means the problem in English, and other people use al-marad, which means the disease in English. Other people use ghayma, and we have different or several euphemistic expression used by the Jordanian people to describe the COVID-19. What I found is that some people depend on some cultural specific implication or cultural specific variation, which is a part of the Jordanian and Arab culture. Other people use the religious religion-based connotation expression. For example, if we look to the word disease, for example, this word used in the Arab culture as a euphemistic alternative for cancer, for the cancer disease, so that they use the same expression to describe the COVID-19. Also, if we look to the word cloud or ghayma in Arabic, cloud in English, they use this word this word means in Arabic like making something invisible for a short time. The Jordanian, at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, they may choose this euphemistic expression, thinking that the pandemic will, or hoping that the pandemic will last for just a short time. It will not last for a long time. And also we can see how the religion or the influence of the religious background of the people affected their choice of word or the euphemistic expression when they choose, for example, ibtila'un min Allah, which means in English, a test from God. So that we have different types of euphemistic expression used by the Jordanian. We ask them, why do you choose this euphemistic expression? We found that Jordan is a conservative society, so that because it's a conservative society, the subject of disease is still regarded in the Jordanian society as a taboo in the Jordan society, so that because there are some socio-cultural constraints and beliefs. So because the disease is a taboo and they consider the COVID-19 as a disease, this taboo requires to use an extensive euphemistic expression to avoid or to soften the negative effect of COVID-19, especially that COVID-19 is infectious disease, and the infectious disease, particularly in the Arab culture, is still as a social taboo or an offensive topic, which is or unspeakable topic for the people. Another thing we ask them, because Jordan is because the Jordan is a conservative society, we found that COVID-19 patients or individuals suspected with COVID-19 are attacked or are bullied either online or face-to-face, so that they resort to the euphemistic expression as an alternative response to avoid any social or cultural emotion resulted from COVID-19. In addition, we found that some existing words in Arabic describing infectious disease is still harmful, so that they use other polite terms or euphemistic terms to avoid using the existing words. Also, they may aim to show indirectness towards fear-based taboos or fatal disease like the COVID-19, because they attempt to comfort themselves because they fear, because of the fear of contracting this invisible virus, or they may have the fear of death, because the fear of death may make them, the Jordanian people, to find an appropriate ways to provide some comfort to themselves or to deliver a negative news of COVID-19 to others indirectly, so that if they want to talk about, for example, someone who died as a result of COVID-19, so that they may use some euphemistic expression to provide some comfort for themselves. Also, they have the fear of stress and anxiety resulted from COVID-19. And we found that the stress and anxiety related to the COVID-19 can be divided into two parts. The first one, the stress that is resulted from isolation and quarantine measures, and the stress of separation from family members, from relatives, so that this makes the Jordanian people to use some euphemistic expression in order to avoid any psychological stress on the speaker or the listener. So that, and another significant point, we found it that some of the Jordanian people deny the truth of the COVID-19 virus at the beginning of the outbreak, so that we found the euphemistic expression as a way or as a roundabout way, as alternative way to deny the COVID-19 virus, or for discussing this topic directly, so that they attempt to conceptualize this topic to reduce its reality. Now we found just regarding the euphemistic expression that is used by the Jordanian, we found that only 15% referred the euphemistic expression, and also we found the males preferred euphemism more than females, and individuals with high educated used more euphemism than uneducated people, and this was surprising result for all of the readers. And I have received some comments about this point, and I think we may need to reconsider this issue or to research this issue in the future, because we know that the educated people or person, he is more polite than uneducated people, so that this is one of the surprising results. We found that no big difference in the use of euphemism between females and males. About the examples of euphemistic expression, we found different euphemistic expression, like karitha in Arabic, which means disaster, or storm means asif in Arabic, like storm, or a crisis. We found some people describe it as a nightmare, other describe it like the danger, and the same, we found that these euphemistic expression, have some figurative language and some cultural specific implication, and other people based on the religious background when they use, for example, tahdhirun min Allah, which means a warning from God, or soldiers of God. Some people describe, Jordanian people describe this pandemic as a soldier of God or as a warning of God, and other expressions, so that this we can say that the Jordanian use both of the euphemistic and euphemistic expressions to describe the COVID-19, and they depend on their cultural background and religious background. We ask them, why do you choose the euphemism? They say that we use it to minimize, which means to minimize the negative effect of COVID-19, or to attack the COVID-19 by using offensive or strong language. Another thing, we asked them, they told us they experience unpleasant feeling, such as fear or distaste or hatred, so that they use the euphemistic expression to attack this unspeakable topic. In addition, some Jordanian people, when we ask them, why do you choose this, say that we adopt the euphemism to scare our children, relatives, and friends from contacting or socializing with others, because they are afraid of contracting this virus. The last reason they provided us why they choose the euphemistic expression, this is very important point. They said that we use euphemism to express frustration and to give warning about the serious health threat of COVID-19. They said that we call the authorities and the government to provide some protective measures. These protective measures should be provided for health service provider. They expressed their frustration and at political leaders and at governments who called the health care provider as a hero, just rather than seeing the health care providers as an individual doing a dangerous job which may affect their life. About the euphemistic techniques, we classify them to 4 techniques. The first one is shift from Arabic to English. The other one, metaphorical expression or metaphor, conceptual metaphors. Then they use also medical terminology and abbreviation. And the last one is the ellipsis. We will talk about all of them in more details. Shift from Arabic to English. We found that some Jordanian switch from Arabic to English using some loan words such as coronavirus, corona, or the virus, or COVID-19. And we know that borrowing foreign words is a major resource for creating or generating euphemistic expression in all languages. And we know that the language has developed, any language has developed by its develops its vocabulary and terms by borrowing other words from English. For example, we can see a lot of medical terms in English which come from Latin and Greek languages. And also Arabic has enriched its terminology by borrowing other words or foreign words from English. For example, we use the word madam as a polite expression or form of addressee. But I want to differentiate here between the Arabic and English. Arabic imposes some socio-cultural restriction or strains in the use of or on the borrowing of foreign words if compared with English, because English gives more flexibility and freedom for speaker or for speaker for borrowing foreign words. So that we found that Jordanian use English as an euphemistic technique to deal with COVID-19 as an infectious disease indirectly due to the recentness and novelness of the virus. What I mean by recentness and novelness of the virus is that there is no equivalent terms in Arabic about the COVID-19, particularly at the beginning of the outbreak. And we know that English is the major medium of communication and knowledge dissemination over the world, so that the Jordanian speaker use English because it's widely spoken and accepted in different areas of life. In addition, Jordanian use English now in all aspects of life, and also it becomes as a part of as the language of teaching and as the language of technology in Jordanian universities and schools, so that the use of English was an alternative part to deal with this taboo topic for Jordanian speakers. The second euphemistic and euphemistic technique was metaphorical expression, metaphor. We know that metaphorization or the conceptual metaphor particularly is a linguistic approach for individual and speakers to understand health crisis and some situations and concepts devoted to the COVID-19. So that the Jordanian use different metaphorical euphemism to discuss this sensitive topic and unpleasant topic. We found that the Jordanian use different conceptual metaphor, like COVID-19 is a war, COVID-19 is a living organism, COVID-19 is a storm, COVID-19 is a crisis, COVID-19 is a danger, COVID-19 is a problem, COVID-19 is a challenge. We have different conceptual metaphor. Then the third the euphemistic and euphemistic technique is the medical terminology and abbreviation. We found a few Jordanian speaker use some technical terms and abbreviations in their daily conversation when they dealing with COVID-19. Abbreviation is a morphological method for producing euphemistic expression. For example, they use the word COVID-19 as a morphological alternative for coronavirus disease 2019. This as an abbreviation used instead of saying the word coronavirus disease 2019. The use of medical terms and scientific names and abbreviation especially are used by specialists in the context of a professional activity, so that we found just a few Jordanian people who use this technique. And another point is that technical and abbreviation needs some time to be more popular and needs because the linguistic use of these technical terms or requires a deep knowledge and understanding of the original knowledge. The next one, the last technique is the ellipsis. We found some Jordanian omitted certain part of the word like corona, so that they use the strategy of concealing. They conceal or remove the taboo aspect, which virus, just they said corona, so that the taboo aspect of this word virus is removed from the word, so that while the positive aspect, or the word that has positive aspect, which is corona, which means in English or in Arabic like crown, has highlighted. So when we ask them why you use this technique, the technique of omission, they said that we may use it to feel less anxious or depressed than those who use the word coronavirus directly. Now I want to move to another topic, or it's related to COVID-19 euphemism in political text. Political discourse is fully loaded by some linguistic devices, some rhetorical expression, and some persuasive expression and figure of speech. And the political discourse, particularly if we found any political speech or briefing or by any leader, we can find a lot of euphemistic expressions addressing some controversial issue or complex issue. About the political, we found that the political leaders provided regular speeches and daily briefing about some precautionary measures and plans which are used to reduce the global threat of COVID-19. Why political leaders use euphemism? We have different purposes or aims. Why? First of all, to persuade the public. Another one is, yes, to persuade the public through arguing about a political issue, to constitute the public attitudes through or by making the public believe in something, by affecting or reshaping their thoughts and opinion. Also, they can use the euphemistic expression to achieve ideological purposes and to release themselves from responsibility. Or we can found that euphemistic expression are used to mislead the public or distort the reality and to attack the other party or enemies. I choose some expression which are used by Trump, the previous president of the United States. Trump, as the position of the president of the greatest country in the world, his character is an issue of debate and division in media and in particularly in the social media, so that his speeches, any speech addressed by Trump is not only addressed in front of the American people, but also these speeches are broadcasted and viewed by all the people around the world. And we found that Trump received heavy criticism at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic because he ignored some experts and administration officials' warnings of the serious threat and the sharp spread of the COVID-19 virus in the, particularly in the early stages or phases of the COVID-19. Trump had the, he tends to make a big impression when using social media platforms, and we see this on the Twitter and Facebook. Also, when he replying to other leaders, political leaders, or when he's speaking to other journalists. Trump, all of the discourse scholars agree that Trump has a good command of language, has a powerful words, and has he employs some figurative and rhetorical expression. He has a wide linguistic capacity. I choose 3 expressions or euphemistic expression example used by Trump. The first one, foreign virus. The second one, invisible enemy. And the third one is the Chinese virus. About the foreign virus, when he uses this expression, foreign virus, this means that COVID-19 is a foreign invader originated in another country, which is China. And we know that China is a major strategic competitor of the USA, as well as he wants to emphasize that China is responsible for the global spread of COVID-19. So that foreign virus is a euphemistic expression that the US is a body facing unknown or external danger identified as a foreign. Trump may want to link the COVID-19 virus with foreignness, also to externalize the responsibility of fighting this global pandemic to the international community, not only the United States. He may want to externalize, and this is not the duty of the United States. It needs a lot of collaboration. And also, Trump may, when he described the virus as a foreign, at the beginning of the pandemic, were no scientific facts about the virus, so that we don't know about the resources of the virus or transmission modes, for example, or symptoms or other scientific features, so that he may use this word foreign to describe that we don't have any scientific facts about this virus, so that we have different possibilities about why Trump used the word or the euphemistic expression foreign virus. And to conclude, when he used foreign virus, he means that COVID-19 as an enemy. He employed this conceptual metaphor to focus on how the COVID-19 is something which is unknown or external. The second one, which is invisible enemy, he used this second euphemistic expression. We notice that there is a rhetorical shift from foreign virus to invisible enemy. This is an acknowledgement by Trump that the global pandemic is very severe and there is a hidden effect behind this pandemic. When he labeling COVID-19 as invisible enemy, also it can be interpreted as a political strategy to push blame on a foreign power, which is China, as to represent China as as a responsible country for this pandemic. Also, he may want to position himself as a wartime president against unknown threat to the United States. Another interpretation, he may attempt to de-emphasize some possible painful aspects of the war against COVID-19, such as death cases, infected people, economic breakdown, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, so that he wants to reshape the American people to another part of the war against COVID-19. He didn't want the American people to focus on the death cases and infected people, because he, at the beginning of the pandemic, ignored the officials' warning. And also he may want to motivate the American attention and supporting by persuading them that they are in a real conflict with this invisible or mysterious thing. At the same time, we can conclude that by using this expression, he used the common conceptual metaphor, COVID-19 is an enemy. The last one, which is, I think this euphemistic expression received a lot of criticism and a lot of debate and about this one. By using this euphemistic expression, Trump personified the pandemic by using Chinese virus. How he personified? What do you mean by personification? Personification is a metaphorical approach which used by speaker to imply, to understand something which is strange, which is the COVID-19 virus, by using a familiar term, so that he used a familiar term instead of a strange thing. The familiar term is the location or the nationality, which is the Chinese, so that he described the virus as Chinese virus. Regarding he may want to represent China as the main hotspot of the virus, and so that China is responsible for this global pandemic. Regarding the we have found two opinions regarding, or when we analyzing this expression, the euphemistic expression, we found that two opinions, especially about this euphemistic expression. Some people say that terms and words tied to the ethnic background and race are potential resources for debate and controversy, so that so that the WHO labeled it as COVID-19 to avoid any geographic references assigning blame to a particular region. Other people, and this may cause some social or hate crimes and physical abuses against Asian Americans in general and Chinese Americans in particular. Other people, or the other parts said that diseases were historically named according to where they came from, and we have different examples like Spanish flu, West Nile virus, for example, Zika and Ebola, and they said that viruses do not know borders or ethnicity or nationalities. This when Trump used this expression, he allowed for other US officials to use this expression and other euphemistic terms such as Wuhan virus and Kung flu. And this is, Wuhan is a city in the middle of the China, which is the location of when it's first originated in the China. And Kung flu, it's used this expression because it's based on the fact that COVID-19 was identified in the land of Kung Fu, which is one of the most widely known Chinese sports. And if we can look to this euphemistic expression, we can say that COVID-19, he uses two conceptual metaphors: COVID-19 as an enemy and the nation as a body, so that US is facing external enemy. Now we move quickly to the last part of my my presentation, which is about translation and the crisis. Translation, we know that the translation is the process or the activity of transferring meanings and information from the source language to another. And the translator should only be bilingual, but also he or she should be bicultural and understand the cultural variation and bilingual aspects, such as the structure of the language and the unity of the language and social differences between any two languages. In crisis and natural disaster or conflicts, translators play a significant role in disseminating knowledge and information. In the COVID-19 crisis, the pandemic produced enormous or a huge amount of COVID-19 health information, which urgently needs to be translated into different language. Most of the COVID-19 materials and information at the beginning of the pandemic are published in English, while other languages are overlooked. So, and we know that all the people around the world have the right to get accurate health information, so that the translation is very significant in the global crisis and the pandemic and such as COVID-19. We found that a lot of people in some developing countries do not have information about the symptoms of COVID-19, about transmission modes, vaccines, death rate, etc. So that they need this information to safeguard themselves and to defeat the virus. So that the translation is very important in the global crisis and pandemic. We ask some translator what are the main problems they face when they translating some COVID-19 or in the era of COVID-19. We found that they face two main problems. The first one is the linguistic problems, which is related to that there is no appropriate equivalence in the target language, especially when they translate from English to Arabic, because this virus is still, we don't have a lot of information about it, and most of the information that were published at the beginning of the pandemic is in English, and we don't have some equivalence. Also, there are some linguistics a problem related to the neologism and compound words and collocations. There are new collocations, new words which are combined and are used in the era of COVID-19, for example. The word pandemic before the COVID-19, it's rarely used. And in our country, the word al-waba, which means the pandemic, it's very hard to be used in the daily conversation, but now it becomes used frequently and commonly. The other part, which is another type of a problem faced by the Jordanian translator, related to the translator themselves, which is like, for example, they receive some work with tight deadlines. Also, some translators have responsibility while working from home as a result of lockdown. As a result of family members' presence, because there is a lockdown and shutdown, school shutdown and university shutdown, so that the freelancer translator, they are not able to work as that in the way that prior to the COVID-19. In addition, there is other problems like price cut, shortage of technical tools when they work in the home. Also, a great demand of translating COVID-19 information while other type of texts are overlooked. And we asked them how to deal with these problems. They said that we tried to use some modern translation technologies and online resources such as parallel text to avoid such a problem. This is some concluding remarks to finish my presentation with.
Professor Olimat, I'm sorry to interrupt. We're actually 5 minutes over our allotted time, so unfortunately we have to conclude. May I suggest that you leave your final slide up so the audience can read it, but we can still enter the discussion portion. I'm sorry to do that, but we're actually over time. Thank you so much. For all of our attendees, the public and the students attending, we're going to now enter about 30 minutes, actually 25 minutes of Q&A period with Dr. Olimat. So please use the question and answer tool, typically at the bottom of your Zoom screen. It says Q&A. I have to say, I've thoroughly enjoyed, learning from this talk. It's a good amount of information, but many immensely, even for someone not from this field, I just see so many tools, so many specific conceptual tools that have such an application in understanding our lived experiences. So I'm excited to enter this Q&A period. Please use the tool to type out your questions, and I will bring them into conversation with Professor Olimat for the next 25 minutes. So as we get started, Professor Olimat, I just wanted to get the discussion rolling. From the material you've presented, you covered, I think, two large directions of presenting this work. You started with, I think, a survey-based study of how Jordanians use language in the context of COVID-19, and then you unpacked the uses of euphemisms and dysphemisms, and then you shifted to official presidential or public leaders' language on the same topic. An opening question for you: how is this? Are these two ways of studying language and how they're used? Are they part of what you do in your research program overall, or is this a new topic of research that you've done given what's happening in the world?
Okay, thank you. To be honest with you, at the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of scholars direct their attentions and scientific research interest to the how the COVID-19 affected all aspects of life. So that as assistant professor of translation and scholar of translation and linguistics, I try to focus on the two parts, how the COVID-19 affected the language aspects, and then also how the COVID-19 affected the translation area. Regarding the language, first of all, I used, as you see, how to deal with the COVID-19 as a term in the Jordanian context or in the Jordanian society, especially that Jordanian society is a conservative society, which the people or the Jordanian individuals are affected by some socio and cultural constraints like other Eastern countries. So that this point directs my attention to link the language the language and the COVID-19 from a pragmatic perspective, so that also the Jordanian people now try to use English in their daily conversation, so that when I ask them about how they shifted, how they used some, because this expression, they borrowed a lot of the euphemistic English expression as a euphemistic or dephemimistic technique to avoid being directed to the COVID-19. After that, when regarding the presidential discourse, the other research, as you know that the United States is the greatest country and Trump was the president of the greatest country of the world. This direct my attention to examine or to analyze his dephemimistic examples that were used by Trump. Especially, he is a debate. He received a lot of criticism at the beginning and a lot at the beginning of the pandemic, and his character is a potential source for debate among journalists, among researchers, and a lot of scholars as well.
Thank you. I have some colleagues in the field of political communication, specifically who come from the tradition of studying rhetoric, the rhetoric of political communication, and some of the questions and areas of focus for them during the Trump presidency has been the norm breaking and norm breaching ways in which Donald Trump spoke and communicated. And that would signify that there is a presidential way to be, and that there this particular the 45th president introduced new ways of speaking that were either historically, it's been some time since presidents spoke and behaved that way in the public sphere, or may have been the first time. And so I'm a casual observer of this phenomenon. So it's been very enriching on many multiple levels to see you demonstrate your tools and for you to apply them at different levels of language being deployed from the ground level. In the beginning you discussed class differences and what may explain the uses of euphemisms or dysphemisms. Then you describe different language arenas in between English and Arabic, and also the directions in which they may travel. So it's been very interesting. We have our first question, if I may actually detour there. Ernie King asks, in the COVID situation, there are a lot of scientific and medical terms like nucleic, polymerase, etc., that are hard to explain. So they're highly scientific and medical concepts that presumably mean something very, very specific to be accurate. So the question here is, how do translators in Jordan handle these cases of highly specific technical language that still needs to shape public knowledge, public behavior, and public response?
Yeah. Yes. I would like to say about this translation, regarding translation. As I said, that there are a lot of information, especially technical terminology with a special meaning. This special meaning, particularly in the medicine, and in Jordan, we face as a translator a lot of problems to deal with these technical terms. When we ask them how to handle these cases or these technical terminology which are related to the COVID-19, they said that, first of all, we use some medical dictionaries, specialized dictionaries. Even other people said that we may use some parallel text. For example, the WHO website provided the translation of some provided the health COVID-19 information in more than one language. One of them is Arabic, so that they try to use these websites because they provide like a brief translation or some translation, or let me say it's like an accurate information, we can say. Another thing, they said that we may try to use the internet, really, so that we try to explain or provide, especially with technical terms, because there is no equivalent term in Arabic which is equivalent or corresponding to English terms related to the COVID-19, so that they use the free translation or paraphrase to give the details or what is the intention behind some COVID-19 terms. This is one of the main problems that translator face, especially or particularly at the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic. So that I highlighted that the translator plays a significant role in such a pandemic, because he tried to disseminate the knowledge and the information in other languages, so that we need like a glossary of, I suggest, or this is one of the last previous research article which is accepted just 3 days ago in west of Sydney University, interpreting and the translation and interpreting journal. I suggest to provide or create like a glossary of terms in more than one language, especially in the official language, at least 6 languages at least, to be available. And this glossary is researchable and at the same time accessible for all the people to be able to understand some related information and material, and at the same time they need this information to safeguard themselves especially if there are a lot of countries, for example, in Africa or in the Middle East, those people are very poor people. They do not have an access to the internet, for example, or they do not have access to the to use the internet or to get such information. And this is I want here to highlight one of the significant thing happened in when the Jordanian Prime Minister provided a daily briefing about the COVID-19 at the beginning of the pandemic. There was a representative of a press, I think it's CNN or BBC, I'm not sure, journalist from this and asked the Prime Minister some questions in English, and she highlighted that we need an interpretation at the same time of your daily briefing. We need such this interpretation, and so that the translation is very important. And I think that to solve these problems, we need an international collaboration between different organizations, like Translator Without Borders. Translator Without Borders provided some a glossary, but this glossary is not enough for all the people, and in certain language we need an international collaboration, and we need from different, like for example, from the WHO, from Center of Disease, from different translation association, for example, and provide like a dictionary or like a glossary, at least, which is researchable and accessible for all the people, at least in the official languages.
Thank you. So I'm going to grossly oversimplify an elaborate and detailed answer, but just so I have some traction, it sounds like that strategy would focus on greater resources and intentional effort in promoting technical communication collaboration, official agency-based and or well-funded efforts to allow technical and scientific communication to happen across cultures and languages. Now, I have a question, which would be maybe the other end of that spectrum. Do you think, or how do you think that would work at the general public level? And if I have a hypothesis or a proposition, it may be something like, is it not inevitable for the public's need at some point for it to be more generalizable and more vague or less technical? And if that is true, is it not the case that we have to rely on some type of metaphorical, archetypical, euphemistic or dysphemistic ways of communicating complex realities in simplified ways such that appropriate pro-social or pro-health behaviors can be taken? So I think, just to continue the thinking, I'm curious, I can absolutely understand the importance and necessity of investing greater effort in allowing technical communication to happen so that experts, governmental actors can do the technical work to deliver institutional and organizational solutions. But at the end of the day, health behavior still in some way requires individual agency, individual understanding, individual level trust and buy-in. So I'm curious, how would you kind of complete that circuit, complete the other side? And is it inevitable, to simplify the question, is it inevitable that we as a species, a thinking, speaking species, have to rely on these things like euphemisms and dysphemisms and be more aware of how those languages themselves shape our understanding, our risk assessment, our intentions, our outcomes?
Okay. I just want to say that this is, I think it's not easy task to provide, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, and we have just 2 years or less than 2 years at the beginning of the pandemic, and the technical terms need some time, I think, to be more popular, and it then can be gradually popularized by the speakers when the people use some expressions frequently so that it can be more popular. I think we may need to use the technical terms, as you said, with experts, with government agency, for example, with political leaders, with specialists in professional activities or contexts. But also the general public, or the people, uneducated people, or the lay people, we can say the lay people, they have the right to have an accurate information about this infectious disease, about this dangerous disease. I'm not sure, but I think by time we can, I think we can try to provide more simple explanation for them. For example, like warnings, like directions about the symptoms of the disease or of the virus, like transmission modes. And this is what was done in Jordan. If we visit any institution, governmental or a private institution in Jordan, we notice that a lot of flyers, a lot of announcements, a lot of brochures provided for the people in a simple or in a simple explanation, or in easy to be understandable for all the people. They think that the readers or the audience from the general public, not from the high-tech people. This is a good way, but I think we need a lot. We still need a lot of efforts and a lot of techniques, and we may need some programming. We may need to. It's the process of not individual process, or it's not an individual technique. It's an institutional. I think it's an institutional, and we may also, some people, the general people now, I think they can go back to some newspaper, to the website, to receive some information, to update themselves about the COVID-19. But as I said, this is not an easy problem, and it cannot be solved at this time. It needs some time. These expressions and technical terms, any technical term, for example, needs a lot. Any person doesn't have a knowledge of, for example, medical terms, or even when he is educated person, for example, he have at least some basic information, so that if we say, or if we provide the people with this information, the basic information that can help them to protect themselves, this is a great. I think it's the first step is very good.
Thank you. I found as you were speaking throughout your talk, it is not just the public health crisis of COVID-19, but other global risk events that, just from memory, I can recall the way in which language has evolved, gone in multiple directions to address, competing stakeholder interests, or become more specific over time. Your talk made me think of the global financial crisis of 2008 to 2012, where initially we were calling it, at least in North America, I think the language expressed the anxiety underneath of what could happen. So I think the first terminology is like early terminology used to call it the global financial meltdown. Even before it occurred, I mean, of course, it was quite catastrophic for many people's wealth and stability and more. But you see the range of ways in which the language shaped both opinions and interests. So was it just a financial crisis? Was it only the housing crisis? Was it limited to just one industry? Was it a global financial meltdown that affected, many societies in the world system? So that's one arena where you can see pandemic-like language evolve and grow and become specific. Still very technical. For the life of me, I still cannot explain to myself what is a mortgage-backed security. I mean, I vaguely understand it, but you see, highly technical language gives you access or lack of access to understanding how the world may affect you in return. The other example I thought of more from the past, the contemporary past, let's say, over the past 20 years, is the issue of terrorism. So, the idea of having a global war on terror, this vaguely defined concept that has, expended trillions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of lives, and repositions in geopolitics around the world, comes again back to this issue of language. Is it an endless war? Is the boundary endless in terms of time and temporality? Is it boundless in terms of region? I've also heard it called, surgical warfare. So how can something be both surgical and endless? So you can see the complexity of language at play. I'm curious. So the question here, not to go into endless descriptions, but I'd love to hear your reflection on other things like the COVID-19 pandemic that started almost as a burst, and we had to find language to articulate it. And then, other issues where we've had to go through the trouble of articulation, specification, which are highly consequential for public policy, public knowledge, and public consequence. So for me, it's like financial crisis and terrorism. Those are the big things I remember from the past. And now we have public health. Are there other cases where you see in your research, in your interests, where language is highly relevant and important to understand or to examine?
Yes, I would like to say here, any language has developed its terminology and itself by using or updating in new expressions. In response to the COVID-19, we see that a lot of terms have entered English, and English speakers and starting using these expressions. But some languages, let me say, may face, there are some cultural or social constraints or boundaries on the language. For example, in Arabic, when we borrow some words from other languages, the people, it's not easy to use it at the beginning. It needs a lot of time if it's compared with English. English has more space or more room of flexibility to accept or to borrow other words from other languages. Regarding the other parts or other effects of pandemic, we know the COVID-19, as I said in the introduction, the COVID-19 is not just a financial or economic problem or disaster. Let me describe it. Also, it is political. There is a lot of debate, received a lot of debate from a political perspective? Is it like a war between two strategic countries, for example? This point received a lot of debate and argumentation on the social media and website and in the internet. Also, I think that the COVID-19 pandemic affected all the aspect of life in all areas of life. For example, we can see the effect of the COVID-19 in sports. For example, a lot of matches stopped or canceled. If we can also say to the a lot of in the economy, for example, in the economy, I see and read a lot of announcement by big companies in the UK and the United States, which said that they closed a lot of branches in different parts of the world. So that the COVID-19 is one of the, I think it's the one of the, it's the main or the major, not health problem. Also, it's a global problem in different aspects of life. I can see in translation and languages, in communication, how to deal with also the contacting with others and the social strategies and linguistic communication among people becomes different in all the world. For example, here, the parties, all of them, we can say, were canceled. The people are afraid of contacting with his friends, of his relatives, so that they stay at home most of his time. And this is supported by the complete or partial lockdown that is governed or by the government. So I think that it's a big problem, or it's a big, I can describe it, most of my discussion with my colleagues, I describe it as a disaster. It's not like even a pandemic, or it has a lot of effects, and its effect will be continue for a long time, for the future. Our generation and the next generation will will be affected, or will be affected, or we can say they will face some other consequences as a result of the COVID-19.
Thank you so much, Professor Olimat. This will have to conclude our public period of discussion. From a communication professor's perspective, I want to just conclude by expressing my gratitude to you as an expert of language and linguistic approaches. You know, from a communication background, we do study how human beings talk and understand one another. But in your discipline, it is clear to me, it is really the undergirding almost DNA of what it is that we study at larger structural levels. So, so I have great admiration for your discipline, and thank you so much for sharing with us a piece of it. Thank you for the public for attending and for your questions.